Hello and welcome to Economically Speaking. I am your host Sudipto Chatterjee and I am with Atanu there. Today we are speaking about economics and what is economics, why do we care, what exactly should we be thinking of when we say economics. Atanu.
Good morning, Sudipto. It's good to start our discussion with understanding what exactly is economics. So, one of the popular misconceptions that we have is that economics is about money, and that kind of confuses the whole idea with finance or
Hmm.
accounting. Economics is fundamentally about people, and therefore, the proper subject matter of economics is how people behave and what do they do and what motivates what they do. That is the proper subject of economics, and therefore you might be thinking then in that case, isn't economics about psychology? Well, fundamentally economics is about human behavior, and specifically about the most important or the most common behavior that we have among people. So what is the common, what do you consider to be what is common behavior or very average, normal, usual behavior among people? What is it?
Some kind of interaction.
Yes, but more specifically, can you, when we have a conversation, that's an interaction also. But what distinguishes an interaction between people, among people, that is of interest to economists?
Money.
No,
No. Okay.
you
So,
can interact with people without actually ever using money. In fact, you can talk about economics without ever mentioning money.
interesting. So, how do people interact? Well,
Which is, again, like I said, it's very common, it's very normal.
so we form groups.
Well, that is true. We form associations, but that's not an interaction between, say, two people. It is the atomic unit of interaction among people, especially two people, two parties.
Handshake.
Nope.
Um, Cooperation to a certain extent, maybe.
Yes, we have to cooperate, so that is a feature of the interaction, that is cooperation. You can have non-cooperative interaction too, but that's just a feature of the interaction itself. But what is
To be part
art?
of the same system.
Well, we are, by the very definition that we are a social animal. We are. What is it that distinguishes interaction between two people, which is not the same as and is distinguishing feature of human interaction as opposed to, say, interaction among, say, two dogs or in the animal kingdom in general? What is it that humans uniquely do which animals do not engage in as frequently or if ever?
Language.
Yes, language is quite an important feature of all human interaction and human societies, but I'm looking for something which is an atomic unit of interaction among people severally and in groups. Okay, so I'll give you a hint. Every day we engage in this activity with other people several times a day. Practically everyone in the world does this, okay? And hermits don't do it. What is it about hermits that they do not engage in this particular interaction? Remember, an hermit is a person who lives all alone. Okay, let me specify this. Robinson Crusoe did not do this. He was the only person in the island until, of course, another person showed up. But Robinson Crusoe doesn't have this feature.
Greet others.
No. Okay, long story short, we trade with other people.
Oh, okay.
Exchange is the basic thing about human behavior, which is of interest to economics.
Okay.
Because in everything that we do, we exchange.
Okay.
Yesterday, you went to the grocery store, you exchanged some cash for some groceries that you bought.
Okay.
So we trade all the time. We are the only life form on earth which trades.
Huh.
And that's the most basic unit of human interaction in terms of
Yes.
that's of interest to economists. Why is trade important? Because what happens is we like certain things, that's our preferences, but we don't have everything that we prefer to have. We have certain things that we would like to exchange those things for things that we don't have to acquire the things that we want.
Mm-hmm.
So the most important or the atomic action is exchange.
Okay. Yep.
Okay?
That
And
makes sense.
that is what creates wealth.
How does an exchange automatically create wealth?
Yeah, that is a very interesting thing. That is, I would be more specific here. I'm not saying that it creates wealth so much as it increases the amount of utility that people have, or happiness, or satisfaction. It increases satisfaction through exchange. So the number of suppose you had 5 apples and I had 3 oranges. I have 3 oranges, you have 5 apples, and if we ever exchange apples for oranges, then both our satisfaction level goes up. Even though the amount of apples and oranges didn't change. There are 3 apples, 5 oranges, or the other way around. But the point is, if we ever engage in exchange voluntarily, that suppose I say, okay, I have 3 apples and you have 5 oranges. I give you one of my apples and get 2 oranges in exchange. So I start with 3 apples, but I end up with 2 apples and 2 oranges. Whereas you have exchanged 2 of your apples for 1 orange. The fact that you did exchange means that you valued the oranges. Therefore, your utility went up. You're happier. You preferred the later bundle to the previous bundle. Okay, so like when I go to a sandwich place and I buy a sandwich for $5, what happens is clearly I prefer the sandwich to the $5 that I gave in exchange. Otherwise, I would not take that exchange. And the other guy was in the correspondingly opposite position where he said he has a sandwich, but he's willing to give it to me for $5. Therefore, he values the $5 more than the sandwich that he had. So what happens is all exchange, voluntary exchange, increases the welfare or benefit to both parties.
So we are talking of a few terms here. You mentioned the word utility a few times.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word wealth, which we are probably visit at some other point of time. And then one other thing you have been stressing frequently in this conversation has been voluntarily exchanging.
Yes, so they are all important things. Firstly, let's define what is wealth. Now, wealth is to be distinguished from money. Wealth is anything that we can use, which is of some utility to us. So the word utility comes in. That is that we value something, like a glass of water when I'm thirsty has some utility to me if I consume it. So things afford some use. We can use them, and the word utility is, without actually going into the definition, is something that is of value to us and use, through use. That's utility. And there are equivalent words like, the level of satisfaction, you could say. So economists use the word utility, and with use you get to know what the real meaning of the word is. Wealth is something that we can use, and wealth provides us with some utility. And utility and satisfaction are used in the proper contexts. So there's wealth, there's utility, there is... we seek to satisfy our preferences. So preferences is something that, I prefer bananas to apples, and you prefer Audis to Mercedes Benzes. So these are your preferences among things. You like to holiday in Hawaii, whereas I much prefer to just go down to LA and hang out in some other place. So we have different preferences. The thing that distinguishes human beings is that we have distinct abilities. You see, one cow is just like any other cow. It's not like, some cows prefer coffee, the other guys prefer milk. They are pretty similar. Human beings are different. They have different preferences and different abilities. You can do very good computer type things, and I'm not very good at that. I'm very good at some other thing. I can probably cook a better meal than you can. So we have different abilities and different preferences.
Right.
So there is heterogeneity among us,
Right.
which is not available to other life forms. When you have seen a Pomeranian, most Pomeranians are pretty much similar in that their preferences and their abilities. So human beings actually create wealth.
Okay.
So, we create wealth in the sense that we create the stuff, we produce stuff that is of use to us.
Okay.
And the more wealth you produce, the more wealth is available for your consumption.
So when I say somebody's wealthy,
Yeah.
what I mean is, or what an economist would interpret that to be, is that person has a lot of things that can be used.
That he can use. So let's go to the word money for the moment.
Okay.
Why do we we commonly denominate, we have to measure, or in some sense get an estimate of how much wealth there is or a person has, and so on. Or you see, basically we are exchanging wealth. That is, when you gave me 2 oranges for an apple, so we exchanged wealth. Now, when I went to the store and I bought a sandwich, I actually didn't give the person something in exchange which was of real use to him immediately. It's not wealth that I transferred to him. What did I transfer to him for a sandwich? I gave him $5. But that $5, he could go and buy a loaf of bread. You see? So what happens is we are exchanging wealth, but money comes in as just a facilitator.
Okay.
So that is, instead of actually giving him what he needs, I give him money which he can then exchange for what he needs. So money is a medium of exchange. It's a mechanism. It's just like I can write a little note and say, okay, this is what I owe you, 1 sandwich. And then you can use that as money. So but wealth is always denominated in monetary terms. Okay, so what happens is when you say that a certain person has $1 million to his name and therefore is wealthy, what it means that he can buy or exchange goods up to $1 million worth of stuff. He can buy. He can go and buy himself a Ferrari for $1 million, or maybe 2 apartments somewhere for $1 million, or he can give 100,000 people $10 each. So now the 100,000 people can each use $10 worth of wealth. Because we always denominate wealth in terms of money, we kind of equate wealth with money, but money and wealth are not the same thing. Okay. So now what happens is, when we produce something, we create wealth. So if I go into the forest and take something that is naturally occurring there, take a tree and work on it. I chop it down, I clean it up, I turn it into lumber or firewood, and now that is wealth.
Okay.
So I've worked on it, I've added value to it. Then I can go and sell you the firewood for your home use.
Okay.
So then that sell is meaning like exchange. Now, when I sell it to you or you give me something in exchange, most of the time it's money.
Right.
So then I can use that money to buy sandwiches. So trade is occurring. Since there is production that I do by producing firewood, and then we trade. And you produce something else. Okay. Now, in your case, what are you producing? You're not really making firewood. You're not baking bread. You're not making sandwiches. You're doing only one thing. That is, you are selling your labor to a company. And that company turns around and gives you some cash, money.
Right.
That you can use to buy firewood and apples and whatever, cars and stuff. So everything that we consume, from firewood to sandwiches to cars, this has to be produced at some point. So that wealth has to be created. It doesn't come down from the sky. So even things that grow naturally are not generally directly useful.
Right.
Like even if there's a field of rice growing out there, you can't actually go and eat that. You have to take the rice out, dry, process it properly, then it becomes useful.
Right.
Okay, so something that is in the ground even, it is not wealth by definition. Just because it is there, it doesn't become wealth. So, for example, oil in the ground, crude oil. So, crude oil was it wealth or not? Is it wealth or not?
Intrinsically, no. It's
Yeah, intrinsically no, but it is today. It's very useful. So, if you had an oil well in your backyard, you'll be pretty rich.
Yes.
You'll be wealthy.
Yeah.
But suppose let's go back 200 years. 200 years ago, you had oil well in your backyard. Would that make you rich? No, it wouldn't make you rich at all because nobody would want that. Because if my backyard had nice fertile soil, I would be better off because then I can plant. And in your backyard had nothing but, let's say, sand and oil seeping out of the ground. You're out of luck because you can't do anything with that. You can't grow stuff there. So wealth is something that is a function of what use it can be put to.
Right.
And who can put it to use? Only human beings through their actions.
Right.
Okay? So 200 years ago, if you had found a rich mine of uranium, radioactive uranium,
Useless again.
you're completely useless. But now we can, the guy who has a large stock of uranium in his backyard is very wealthy.
Yes.
Because we know how to use it. So that's the important thing. Wealth is something that does not exist out there. It requires human action.
Yes.
It requires human action for it to become wealth. There are no natural resources in that sense. I mean, there are things that exist in nature by itself. Uranium, oil, trees in the forest. These are all, they become resources only when we actually, do something to them and we are able to do something with them, with their products. So economics is a study of human behavior in the sense that how we exchange things, how we produce things, how we consume things. That is the basic thing that we study. The fact that money comes in is incidental in the sense that now we want to make it, it reduces our need to keep track of so many things. So, your company doesn't say, okay, what all do you need? You need this, that, and 40 different things that you use every day. It doesn't give you those things. It just hands you money and then you go and decide how much of what to buy and when to use it and so on. So that's the whole idea. That's what we economists study, how people behave and what motivates them. And we also study what is an efficient way of doing things and what are not efficient way of doing things. That's the basic idea behind it.
Okay. So, wow.
So if you, what kind of questions does this lead to? And so we can talk about that, or we can talk about that the next time.
Yes, let's leave that for the next time. You brought up the point of efficiency. You also brought about, or at least touched upon money.
Yeah.
And you also brought about the fact that intrinsically most things occurring in nature are not useful until you figure out a use for them. So by default, somebody who had a oil well in his backyard was absolutely useless 200 years ago, but now it's very useful, and therefore wealth happened to be with him, which was not before.
Yes, so then the important thing to remember is that whether things occur naturally or not, anything for it to be wealth is firmly human-centric. That is, where it is from our point of view, it is that we create the wealth. And whether something which was wealth at one point is wealth now or not changes with time. Because of various different factors. Our preferences might change, our technology might change. And this is another thing that we have to talk about. The next time we'll talk about is what is technology and how does it help us in the creation of wealth and so on.
Fantastic. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.
Okay.
We'll talk to you
See
again next week.
time. Bye.
Bye-bye.